What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? What's up, gang? Couple minutes late. Apologies. A little late in the day for our normally scheduled programming. Just took a little while to get going today. Had some beers, hung out last night. Slept in a little bit. Woke up all sniffly as usual when I drink beers, but we're powering through the day. We've gotten our Sims run. We've got the projections are up on the site. Everything's updated for all the news that we currently know. Only 4 games, not a ton of lingering questions. I'm sure we'll get some surprises, but nothing totally crazy. Just taking a quick peek over at Underdog and their Twitter feed. A lot of news about tomorrow. The first 6 tweets are about tomorrow. Walker Kessler probable. Book still technically questionable, but seems like he's going to go. The 2 key ones, I think, injury-wise, are Brandon Ingram, Jalen Duren. Those are the 2 that we don't really have full info on yet. I've got them both in, but we'll have to wait and see on those. Everything I ran through, projection sims included both of them. We just saw both of those teams without those players last night, so we kind of have a pretty easy direct comparison. So that'll be easy enough changes to make. Let's kind of get into this one. Probably not going to go crazy long on this show. Just kind of wanted to go through some of the sim results, talk through the slate a little bit. Helps me out doing these. When I'm talking to you guys, helps me get a good handle on what's going on out there. So let's do sort by DK points here. So just like a I guess top of the slate, kind of an overview if we want to start there. Some of the sim results. That's not helpful. Top of the sim results board. Ignore Killian Hayes here. He was over projected accidentally when that ran, so we're a little bit skewed. Ignore his ROI. He wasn't landing in the top lineups anyway, at least not all that frequently, so it didn't screw us up too badly. Everything else should be fine. He was over projected. It was only by 2 points, 3 points. But I accidentally had a thing that I left there in the initial run. So the ROI number for Killian Hayes, I don't really buy. But he'll be around these numbers. It wouldn't be too far off. But we'll skip him. Wendell Carter pulling in a decent ROI, but not really landing in the top lineups on FanDuel. Very solid ROI marks and getting into a fair amount of the top lineups on the DK board. Solid 30-point projection for your 5,700, giving you a very good points per dollar mark. 0.76 DK points per minute so far this season. But plenty of run, plenty of opportunity. What's the total in that game? We've got, just schedule-wise, the late game is once again kind of the target. 227-point total in that one. Phoenix favored by 8.5 over San Antonio. You've got some big guns in that game, and you've got a pretty big total. So it's nice to chase that one. And then this game, 221.5, the Orlando-Utah game. The other 2 are low-end games. 214.5 between Toronto and Philly. 215 between Detroit and New Orleans. So really the 2 later games are the 2 better games. They'll probably be pretty weighty in terms of some ownership. But I like options like Wendell Carter, Zach Collins in that San Antonio and Phoenix game. He's been productive. 36 fantasy points the last time out, 27 minutes played. He's putting up a solid ROI number. Landing in the top lineups more on FanDuel than on DK, where he's a center only. You get him at power forward or center on the FanDuel slate. Jordan Clarkson, going to be super popular on both sites. I believe he's the highest projected player for ownership on one of the 2 sites. I forget which. But he's going to be popular on both. Solid 32-minute projection. Plenty of opportunity to put up pretty decent score here. 0.92 DK points per minute so far on the season. Last time out, 37 and change, 37.7 in just 25.9 minutes. That's the kind of ceiling that you can get from Clarkson in not too much time if he's lighting things up nicely. A lot of guys from the San Antonio, several right in a row, San Antonio and Utah game. But a lot of easy to go to names up in the top portion of the ROI board when we're sorted by DK ROI here. You've got Embiid, Nurk, Okogie's going to be annoyingly valuable again. THT I don't really like, but he's lingering at the at the bottom of the positive ROI board. Well, there's some good options. Fultz, Clarkson, obviously, and Collins. And then just below the line, just as we're getting into the negatives, are actually Paulo's just barely above. Franz Wagner's just barely above. Cade just slightly below. CJ. So there's some good options to work with. It's not a lot of dumpster diving in the positive ROI plays. Go back up here and resort this. So just tackling things positionally, as usual. Ah, damn it. Forgot to grab a tissue. What's going on, Cujo? Cujo says, what's good, everyone? I didn't say hi to everybody. Trey's here. Trey's tired. He's from the gym. Tired from the gym, though. Not from hanging out and drinking. Aloysius is here. What's up, Aloysius? Handful of people hanging out. I know it's a not the best time for me to be on. There's competing shows and everything, so appreciate the guys that are here hanging out. Hit the like and the subscribe, and tell your friends. Booker, assuming he's back, looks great. Looks like Devin Booker projects out very well. 1.3 fantasy points per minute on the season. It's just the one game, played 37 minutes. I've just got him at 33, but he could easily cruise beyond that. 36 is in play or even higher. You do get a potential little bit of a ding to just the overall upside for like Kevin Durant that we've seen. That'll come down a little bit, comes down in projections, but love the spot for Booker. 9,700, 9,500 feels accurate-ish, but a little on the cheaper side. Coming up 11% of the time in top lineups on DK. Just 3%, 6% on the FanDuel slate, but a positive ROI number on FanDuel, which is interesting. A luxury item, one of the easy guys to pay up for on this slate. You're not paying up too far for him. So I love the spot for Book, assuming that he's out there. If not, obviously you can spike back over to KD. You would get Eric Gordon. You would get a little bit more run for Okogie. So there will be options if he doesn't play, but it seems like he's certainly trending toward playing. Maxey, another guy just out there looking like Tyrese Maxey, I think. I've got a full projection on him. I didn't really ding him or anything for the new guys for Philly coming in around the edges. Not really worried about that right now. I think Maxey's got a good opportunity to light things up. 1.29 FanDuel points per minute, 1.35 DK points per minute so far on the season. Roughly 15% of the time in top lineups on DK. Same story on FanDuel. Slightly negative ROI play, but a strong option from the top of the board. Bear with me just half a second. I'm going to grab a tissue. It's fun talking when your face is leaking. Howdy, Travis. What's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Scotty Barnes, 15% of the time, basically, across the board on both sites in that kind of clunky Toronto-Philly game. But you got two good options here. Obviously, you've got a good option in Embiid from that game. Pascal Siakam, I think, was looking pretty good in that game. And then Jakob Poeltl was looking fairly good again. So you've got some options. Poeltl had a nice game last night after we talked about him. That was the part of the slate I hit the best. Had an okay slate last night. Not a winner by any means, but felt good about how my lineups were structured. Good about how they were cruising through the tournament. We just didn't get to quite the right spot. Mamba, what's going on, Mamba? Mamba says, sup, Roto fam? So yeah, I think you can get plenty of high-end value out of Maxey or Scotty Barnes. They're coming up about the same amount of the time. But then you get into this range where it's just a ton of options. Some multi-positional guys in CJ McCollum, THT, Anthony Melton. Multi-position for Melton, Dennis Schroeder, Cole Anthony going down the board on the DK side. All three of these guys on DK, point guard only. But doesn't really, it takes it down from by about 10 percentage points. But they still look very, very good on both sides. Some very competitively priced guys, 72, 55, 51. CJ, obviously the best out of the group, the best player, the best projection. Points per dollar wise, the other two are passing him because they're significantly cheaper. But CJ's got the highest ceiling out of those three players by a pretty wide margin. So I actually like him quite a bit at the 7,700 price. Seems like Ingram will be back. No Zion in that rotation today. Kind of a messy rotation. I didn't like doing the minutes for that one. But I do like CJ. Worst case scenario, you're getting tons of opportunity for him. 1.24 FanDuel points per minute. 1.25 on the DK scale. Slightly negative ROI, but in the 20s in terms of coming up as the top point guard. Gotta like that. 51.7 FanDuel points last night in 37 minutes. Fultz is a .90 FanDuel point per minute player. Just 20.5 points in 32 minutes the last time out. We're projecting him out pretty solidly here. What did he have? Let me grab this. Click over to here. Open up the page I didn't remember to open before the show. Since the start of last year. Come on. Hey, there we go. 1,800 minutes since the start of last year. He's been a 1.03 FanDuel, 1.02 DK point per minute player. So underperforming his usual rates by about a tenth of a fantasy point per minute. Has a pretty critical impact there. He's more this guy than he is this guy. But out of these three guys, out of CJ, Fultz, and THT, well, THT also has a pretty easy access to a floor score. He had the exact same score in 23 minutes the last time out. He's also got the lowest minutes projection. So again, points per dollar wise, tournament play wise, these guys are perfectly fine. If you need something secure, just go to CJ. Melton, secure minutes, 5,600. Certainly looks all right, coming up about 25% of the time in the top lineups on FanDuel, about 15, 16% on DK. Downboard options, Cole Anthony. Another piece in that Orlando-Utah game that's not bad. Pretty solid points per dollar. Coming up in 27%, 22% over on DK. 1.11 DK points per minute so far this season. Pretty good out of Cole Anthony. Who else? Like I said, don't love the Killian Hayes option. 0.75 FanDuel points per minute so far. Solid 13.1 fantasy points the last time out in 25.9 minutes. Mom, you didn't remember Space Force? Yep, that is a real thing. It is. I mean, it's not the craziest idea in the world. It is something that, the future will need, and it's good to be planning for those sorts of things. There's all sorts of things that'll be in the next 50 to 100 years super relevant, like mining of asteroids and, defending the mining of asteroids and so on and so forth. If we ever actually start, officially really taking space travel seriously again. But they could have come up with a better name than Space Force. It's just dumb. Just makes it sound so dumb. I'm heading to the Sixers game and they were talking about Space Force. All I could think of was the movie Spaceballs. Spaceballs is great. So let's keep on looking on the board here. Nobody really crazy from downboard, at least not in the current form, at the point guard position. 4-game slate, some of these guys might become a somewhat relevant play. But you've got a lot of pretty similar pricing through here. There's nobody at a $3,000 price that's really skyrocketing right now. Solid 4.74 for 4,400 on Colin Sexton if you wanted to go there with a 22-minute projection. I don't love that option. Sexton's just more at that level. It's an okay point per dollar score, but he doesn't have much ceiling on him unless something happened where he got 30 plus minutes. So I'd just rather try and find the money to Get to, who's this? Jalen Suggs even for 28 minutes. Find $600 more. Certainly 4,800 for Trey Jones in 26 minutes. That's not a bad option at all. One of the top point per dollar. What's that? The second highest point per dollar at the point guard position on DK for 4,800. Pretty high on FanDuel as well. 20+% in the top lineups. So I would just try and find the additional 400 rather than messing around too much down here. And you can see that just in the returns in the top lineups. You can see that in the ROIs. Again, we're ignoring that Killian Hayes ROI for those who weren't here before. Let's move on to shooting guard. Come on. A lot of the same guys, I'm sure. We pick up Cade Cunningham here. He's on a point guard as well on FanDuel, so he picks up a ton of value over there. You can see the giant difference for Cade across sites. A very good option today. 0.98 FanDuel points per minute so far this season. 1.09 DK points per minute. That's a big discrepancy. But landing in the optimal 32% of the time on FanDuel, just 7%, 9% because he's a shooting guard only on the DK slate. Ingram, assuming he's out there, looks very, very good. He was the highest owned player on the FanDuel slate. So was Clarkson was on DK, I believe. Just barely clinging to positive ROI over there. Looks very good on DK as well, 40+% of the time at shooting guard or small forward. Small forward only on the FanDuel slate. Love the bouncing back and forth between positions. A solid 1.14 DK points per minute so far, 30% usage rate. For 7,900 too, Ingram is a stud on the FanDuel slate if he goes. 8,000 on DK against the lower cap, 5.04 points per dollar though. Devin Vassell, significant ceiling. 38.7 FanDuel points in 35.9 minutes last time out. Hasn't had a monster out there yet. 0.89 FanDuel points per minute on the season. But Vassell's got very solid upside. What was he last year, let's say? I should put the last year rates back into the table here. Just running out of real estate. I wonder if Wowie's running slowly because just so many people are on it right now. And like many shows are running right now. It shouldn't be, but it is. Fuck was I talking about? Oh, Vassell. 1.02 FanDuel points per minute, 1.04 DK points per minute since the start of last year. So another guy who's just underperforming by about a tenth of a fantasy point per minute so far, which is significant. Carrying a solid projection, landing in the top lineups about 15% of the time across sites. Clarkson we touched on up at the top. Looks like a very solid option. 0.85 FanDuel points per minute, 0.92 DK points per minute so far this season. Putting up a monster in terms of the points per dollar on DK, 5.76 at 5,400. He's a $6,000 option on FanDuel, picks up point guard eligibility over there. Just as good in terms of the returns in top lineups. Not quite the same point per dollar play, but just coming up an absolute ton. Joker's chilling like right over here. Good boy. Looking down the board on FanDuel, there's a couple of these guys like Suggs, Burks, who annoyingly scratched either right at lock or slightly after lock last night. I only had him in like 4 lineups, but it was just so dumb. Clarkson since the start of last year, 1.03 DK points per minute, 0.96 FanDuel points per minute. So again, especially with the higher rate between the two sites over on DK, gotta love getting Jordan Clarkson at that price. Justifiably very, very popular. Cole Anthony we talked about on the point guard side. Dennis Schroeder, we didn't really touch on Schroeder. 1.09 DK points per minute so far this season. Landing in the top lineups 17% of the time. Not uninteresting. Solidly negative ROI number, though. Down the board, Gordon benefits if Booker doesn't go, but right now doesn't look like a great play. Single digits in terms of optimal lineups on FanDuel. Better on DK, 5,500 over there, but not a very good point per dollar mark at all. I'm actually surprised he comes up this frequently at those numbers. Jordan Hawkins, I didn't really know where to go with the minutes. I was low, then I was high, then I was low again, and then I just kind of middled it. But not really coming up as overly relevant anyway. Gary Trent, just as a cheapo option. Not a ton of upside, but he's landing in the top lineups double digits from the bottom of the board for 4,500. So if you just need to pay for a cheap square, 24-minute projection, 0.64 FanDuel points per minute so far this year, though. Since the start of last season, he's been a... Come on. Start of last season, 0.83. So, not, obviously, that's why he's a $4,500 player. He's not a star by any means, but he's been underperforming so far this season by about 0.2 of a point per minute. So again, another significant spot that people probably won't go to that much. Just a role player, but a guy with a little bit of ceiling beyond where he's projected, and where he's projected is getting him into the top lineups an okay amount of the time because he's just a cheap square that helps pay for those other spots. Not a priority by any means, but if you're building 150, you'd probably end up with some Gary Trent. Everybody down here, not so much. Same on DK. Nothing really crazy. A 4% of the time. -7 ROI at 3,900 for Grady Dick. Yeah, a lot of just, filler type guys down through the bottom of the shooting guard position. Anybody else? I don't love this position. OG Anunoby, not a great point per dollar play. Not really coming up in the top lineups on FanDuel. A little bit more on DK. Just barely scraping double digits in the win column. I like OG at times, but just not quite getting there for me today, I guess. On DK, I guess you can play him. It's a reasonable enough option. 0.89 DK points per minute so far this year. That's exactly what he's put up since the start of last year. So just kind of an is who he is option for OG today. I guess it's just the price that I don't like on the FanDuel slate, because like I said, I do like the player active guy. Anybody who can create fantasy points the way that he does. I like, guys that are disruptive out on the court and can make some things happen. So I don't mind that option on DK, but it's not a priority, especially when he's surrounded by guys with pretty significantly higher lineup scores. What's going on in the chat? Mom, I haven't seen Hawkins play yet. I didn't watch that game last night. But what did he do? He went out and played 37 minutes last night. Pretty significant chunk of action. I would imagine you're getting back to that level if there's no Ingram tonight. With Ingram out there but no Zion, I just kind of knocked him down but still expected that they would throw him some minutes. So it's just kind of, it's not exactly like positional minutes. I'm just kind of throwing minutes at the board. But good note. I'll make sure to check him out. I'm going to ask you the same question for the end. Top play of the slate, roto play of the day. Travis says Sexton may be getting minutes at the 2 guard, though, according to his news thing on DK. It's still just the Colin Sexton of it all. Doesn't really fill me with inspiration. Let's see. Whoops. That was not where I wanted to go. Sexton. This isn't last year. All right, I'm officially going to put these rates back into the spreadsheet. This is just too slow to do it this way. Sexton, since the start of last year, 0.91 FanDuel points per minute, 0.95 DK points per minute. Where is he? Down here for 4,200. I mean, the rates are perfectly fine. If you're expecting him to get more minutes, it becomes a better play for sure. What's he been averaging? So far, he's gotten... Where are you, Kellen? 20 minutes a night, 20.4 a night so far. Played 22 last night. That's where I've got him again. So I've technically got him getting 2 minutes or a minute and a half more than he's been getting. Not really comfortable going much higher than that. And it's just, again, it's not really... I guess on a small slate, it is probably worth at least thinking about because it is a good game environment. You get him a little bit better already over on DK. He's certainly not unplayable, but it's not something I don't think I'm going to drive the minutes projection up, and I don't think I really like push to get to Colin Sexton, if that makes sense. But certainly not an unplayable guy on a 4-game slate. All right, let's get off this position. Let's go with all the forwards because I am dying. Forwards, we got some options. KD, top of the board. Solid 35 minutes for 10.8 on FanDuel, 10.8 on DK, same pricing. Significantly more interesting on FanDuel given how frequently he appears in the top lineups as compared to DK, just like 10% of the time on DK, 25-ish% on FanDuel in the top 1%, 20% as a winner. Those are fairly significant numbers. He's obviously just a pay-up luxury item on both sites, so you can easily get to KD. Might see a little bit of a downturn. He's at a 33% usage rate so far. With Book coming back, we could probably expect the usage to dip a little bit. The requirement for everything to run through him to dip a little bit. But still very much Kevin Durant. Did you guys see the picture of him and Wemby just like hovering by the, like 11 feet above the rim? It's insane. Wemby's just been amazing to watch. Just watching somebody with that size and shape just be that agile and that mobile and everything. It's just game changer. Really, really good. And he lands on the top lineups a fair amount of the time today. For only 8,000, power forward and center on the FanDuel slate, 7,900 power forward and center on DK. You'll call it 11, 12% here. In the top lineups, 1.24 DK points per minute so far, 1.25 on the FanDuel scale. 20% of the time in the top lineups on FanDuel. Another guy a little bit more valuable on FanDuel. Franz Wagner, wow. A lot of these guys come up significantly more on the FanDuel slate. Wagner pushing nearly 47% of the time. Markkanen, 48% of the time in the top lineups. So that's telling me that the combo of Larry Markkanen and Franz Wagner are going to be in my lineups a fair amount of the time. And you get multi-position eligibility out of both of them across 3 positions, which is great. So I don't even have to load up all my small forward shares or my power forward shares into those guys. So you can still create diverse sets of lineups while getting to an absolute ton of those guys. Ingram also comes up very, very competitively. If you're working on a solidly balanced lineup, getting Markkanen at 86, Ingram at 79, and then you could go to Paolo Banchero, who's pulling in a crazy amount of value, and certainly Franz Wagner down here. There's a lot to work with that 4-man combination, and you can get them all easy to roster, and I'm sure that is easily affordable. Not a bad setup in that grouping on the FanDuel slate. And then still a lot of guys to work with, too, around them. Pascal Siakam coming up in the top lineups a quarter of the time. Just 10% on DK. Scotty Barnes, 15% on both sites. 4.59 on the DK points per dollar scale. Solid 1.32 minute contributor. Point guard and small forward eligible as well, which is always interesting. 67 for Franz on DK. Puts him a little bit off where he is on the FanDuel scale, but that's still very good returns in the top lineups, even at 6,700. Aja Thompson, Keldon Johnson. I never loved getting to Keldon. I don't know what it is. I've soured on Keldon. I used to like getting to him. He just gives me too many games like this. Yeah, well, 32, 42 points. Would I take 42 out of Keldon today? I guess I would. At 72, especially on a 4-gamer. But I just feel like the ceiling doesn't really come through all that frequently with Keldon for whatever reason. 6,500 on DK. 72 on FanDuel. A little bit better looking on DK. 14% of the time in top lineups. 1.04 DraftKings point per minute. Jake Swills. What's up, bud? Yo. John Collins, Kelly Oubre. With all the value, especially on FanDuel, with all the value that several of these guys are showing, I think they're just going to soak up a lot of shares. But since everybody's multi-position eligible, you can get to decent chunks of a lot of these guys down the board as well if you want to. And I think they're just the guys that will fill out lineups pretty naturally. Josh Okogie, still a 30-minute projection on Okogie, 4,900. Not the greatest overall points projection in the world. Putting up just 0.68 FanDuel points per minute so far, 0.69 on the DK, but still showing some value. A 5+ points per dollar for 4,500 on DraftKings. It's not bad. Landing in the top lineups 20% of the time. Jake says if Ingram sits, Hawkins is a stone cold lock at 4,600. Book him for 20 shot attempts. Also love Suggs. Yeah, look, if you're getting 35, 36 minutes from Hawkins again, that would be pretty valuable. What was his price? Do I have him on this one? No. $43 on FanDuel and 46 on DraftKings. Yeah, that could pick up some value. .8% true shooting so far, an 11.4% assist rate, 6.1% rebounding. Putting up 9 points, 3 boards, call it 4 boards, 2 and change assists. Taking 7 threes a game, just making 28% of them. If those start falling, that starts to look even better. And that's in just what? What's his minutes been? I think he's played significant minutes in the last 2 and not that many minutes the first 2, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, 37 and 35 the last 2, 18 and 9 the first 2. So yeah, that's certainly one to watch at the very least, but you definitely need to get those minutes. Also be targeting Bagley with the opposing bigs if Duran sits. Yep, certainly. We haven't gotten to him yet, but Duran didn't really pop. Where was he? Is he just a center on DK? He's not going to come up there. Yeah, just center on both sides. Yeah, he didn't really pop that much. 7,700, not great in the points per dollar. Only 3% of the time. 9%, 8% on DraftKings for 68. A little bit better looking on DraftKings. Mid-4s points per dollar. He's a good player, 1.33 points per minute. Not bad at all so far, but not really crashing through in any of the top lineups. A lot of distribution at the center spot. Well, just a lot of these guys into the mid-teens. Who's the top? John Collins? That's a weird one. That's more power forward, probably. Let's finish off the forward slate. Oh, and then Bagley just doesn't have the minutes right now to have any kind of results. But as you point out, if Duran doesn't go, then Bagley definitely spikes from 18 to like 30 plus minutes and would look pretty okay for the money. 52 on FanDuel isn't totally ideal. 44 on DK, he's going to have some value. Yeah, and the opposing guys, as Jake points out, the difference between Duran and Bagley is ridiculous. Bagley stinks at defense. Yeah, that was one that was looking pretty good early yesterday. I don't know where he finished with Ayton that Blaine called out in the chat yesterday. We were going back and forth in the Discord. Blaine pointed out that he was doing well, and then I pointed out that Jakob Poeltl was also playing well for a little bit less at 3% ownership. They were both really low owned yesterday, though. They looked like good plays. Nothing the rest of the game? Okay. Yeah, I stopped checking in probably halfway through that game in terms of just in terms of where I was at with my beer consumption. Then I just started checking my own lineups. Mark, I don't play cash games at all. So I have no issue with like building lineups for them. I think it's straightforward. But I just don't enjoy it. So I've never, same with poker. I never was into, I play cash games in poker, but I was much more into playing tournament poker. And it's always been the same for DK. Yeah, we had the World Series on here too. A lot of the so-called sharks struggle in cash. There's guys that clean up in cash. A lot of those guys are relegated to like playing each other if they want to make big money. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really perused results in what people see returns wise in cash games. But yeah, to me it's a simplified version of the game, I guess. We're just really looking at those top like point per dollar type plays. You're getting to, the goal is almost to get to the same plays as everybody else rather than to calculate better, outwit, outsmart, whatever you play you want to, whatever you want to call it. So just different approach. But yeah, nothing wrong with the head-to-head or the cash games rather by any means. I think the 5 times multiplier ones are kind of interesting. That are like, kind of hybrid tournament cash game. So let's get back into this. So we touched on a lot of these options up here. Not a ton. There's plenty of useful pieces. Nobody to like super, super high priority down the board here, though. Okogie we talked about briefly. But again, looking pretty decent on the DK scale, despite the fairly low projection. Gordon needs Booker to sit. Herb Jones just is who he is. Trent, we talked about having potentially a little bit of sneaky cheapo value on FanDuel. Olynyk, Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher shouldn't be showing up this much. That's an odd result. He only costs 4,000, but we're not really talking about a ton of runway there. I guess as a 4-gamer tournament dart, that's okay, but I don't tend to love going to guys who are projected for below 20 fantasy points and below 20 minutes. Those tend to not really be ideal. 3,900 on DK comes up 12% of the time. I don't love that option. Just kind of a limited ceiling when you're talking about only 20-ish minutes. But a 4-game slate, so some of those short options are going to be in there. Let's get to centers and let's punch out of here after that. 543. No football show today. Football projections are up on the site, by the way, for the showdown slate. If you're really nice and hit the like button, maybe I'll pop open the spreadsheet real quick and take a quick look at it. Embiid, the clear monster at the top of the slate, 55-point projection on both sites. Put up 84.5 the last time out in less than 30 minutes. That's crazy upside. 1.84 fantasy points per minute so far. Landing in the top lineups in double digits on both sites. Positive ROI on both sites. One of the clear-cut, easy-to-go-to best options on the slate, regardless of the $12,000 salary, the 11.5 on the DK board. I liked that a lot of those really valuable power forwards were, like small forward, power forward, or small forward shooting guard, so that you can get just a filthy amount of Embiid. And like you're working, you can work Siakam in at power forward, you can work Wemby in, you can still work Zach Collins in. Really, I'm losing shares of Nurk, who's fine, but not a crazy high priority. I'm losing shares of Wendell Carter, who's, again, fine, but not crazy high priority. All the guys that are relevant in terms of where they're landing in these top lineups are the guys that have power forward eligibility as well. Pirtle, decent returns. On DK, it's less like that because, A, you've got fewer guys. Well, yeah, it looks slightly fewer guys with the multi-position, but you've got multiple spots that you can put everybody into. So you can double up your center shares if you wanted to. So we get a little bit more value for guys like Wendell Carter. 0.76 DK points per minute, but putting up a very nice ROI number. Landing in top lineups 12% of the time in the top one, 16% of the time in winners. Walker Kessler, also questionable today. Only 0.83 DK points per minute so far, 0.83 FanDuel, 14.8 the last time out in just 17.9 minutes. Did he get hurt and come out of that? Not sure what happened with Kessler there, but hasn't put up the biggie yet. But we know that those potential big defensive games are coming. Joe Val, 25 minutes. No Zion in that front court now, so there should be enough work for Joe Val to do where he might pick up a little additional value, but just never really plays enough time to get a really true ceiling score. On his 4-gamer that's this short, he could provide a little bit of value, but how many times do you really want Joe Val, even at half the price, getting roughly, 2/3 the minutes over Joel Embiid? Eubanks from down the board, landing in a handful of lineups. Less so on DK for 45. No real pressing options down here. Any one of them is okay for very, very low cost. Larry Nance is probably the most interesting there. 3,900. Could see a couple additional minutes for him. Could see a little bit of the additional upside there. But again, not a priority by any means. No real love for any of those guys on the bottom of the DK board. At 32, though, who's that? Bassey? I don't know. Not in 15 minutes. I don't really love that one. Outside of Embiid, again, Collins, but you've got him at power forward. But he's coming up a lot, 30% of the time. Pretty solid 32-minute projection. 0.98 DK points per minute so far this season. Not bad by any means, but I just want to sell my soul to get to these Embiid shares on at the center spot on both sides. Just looks like the top play. Nurk at 1.26 FanDuel points per minute so far, 1.24 DK points per minute so far. Not a bad option if you're going away from Embiid. 7,300 is a significant discount there. He projects out pretty well. Decent points per dollar scores. Positive ROI on DK. Slightly negative on FanDuel. But probably your second best center-only option. He'll see a little bit less to do as well. Not that he and Book play the same position by any means, but just with Booker coming back in, be less need for him to do anything on the offensive end anyway. Nobody else really standing out. Kelly O, 20 minutes. I like getting Kelly O when he's sneaky and getting like 28 minutes, 26 minutes. 20 is a little short. Does come up a fair amount of the time, though. Center and power forward again. So far this season, 1.18 points per minute. So here you go. That game would be valuable. 26 minutes, 31 points. That's almost exactly what I was thinking of when I said I like getting Kelly O when he can be sneaky in 26, 28 minutes. If he got that kind of a run and gave that kind of result, he would probably hit the board pretty hard. Non-priority guy, but a solid mixer. Not somebody that I would take out of lineups. Jake says Wendell Carter been shooting terribly so far. 47% true shooting for Wendell. 4.8% assist rate, 14.5% rebounds. 8.3 points and rebounds per game. 1.5 assists. Shooting 20% from three. With Joel Embiid, 42.9% from three so far. 4.7 takes a game, putting up 31 points. 61.6% true shooting. He's just great. Pascal Siakam's not expensive for Pascal Siakam. 7,900 on FanDuel. That's a very aggressively good price for Pascal Siakam. Has not been all that great this season. 0.91 FanDuel points per minute so far. He's 8,700 though. I mean, that tells you the story across town in terms of what his price ought to be. And really even that is arguably a bit low. Since the start of last year, Pascal Siakam is loading, and he has put up a number of fantasy points per minute that is yet to be revealed, but will be soon, presumably by our pals over at Add More Funds. Running out of things to say. Come on. There it is. Since the start of last season, 1.18 DraftKings points per minute, 1.15 FanDuel points per minute for Pascal Siakam. So dramatically underperforming his usual results. At 7,900, there's a pretty clear-cut ceiling for Pascal Siakam. I love that we get him at power forward on the FanDuel slate. So I really like these two guys in lineups together. And then on FanDuel. Sorry, DK people, but I'm talking FanDuel right now just because that's where I'm playing and I'm thinking about the lineup that I want to make. So like those two guys, any combination of like Markkanen, Ingram, well, less so Ingram, but Markkanen, Wagner at 65 is easy to cram in there. And then who else was it? Boncaro at 74. You could probably fit in that too. And then fill out with some value plays. Not bad. DraftKings wise, you could do similar, I'm sure. Difficult to get both of them as your starting point on DK just because of where Siakam's priced. But Embiid as a rock solid starting point on both sites is not bad. And then you pop over to power forward and you've got some options. Cheapo John Collins again just keeps drawing the eye there though. At 31%, that is high. 5.02 is your highest points per dollar guy. Pretty solid minutes. What's he been since well, while that loads. It's definitely a more difficult combination on DraftKings. Because you got Markkanen is also more expensive site to site. So it's difficult to put these two guys together with Embiid. FanDuel's a little bit more friendly with some of this today. Collins, since the start of last year, where is he? 0.97 FanDuel points per minute, 0.98 DK points per minute. So right now, right on track. Almost exactly what he's doing right now. Did I look him up before? Somebody else was doing exactly what he was doing right now. So yeah, guys, I think that is the slate pretty much positionally anyway. A little all over the place today. Top winners, top 1%ers anyway. BI sitting all the way up at the top. Clarkson, the aforementioned John Collins, Larry Markin. Look at the love for Utah. THT is there. But that Utah-Orlando game right through here, jeezy crazy. As we're sorting this by DraftKings top 1%ers, little Orlando-Utah game stack if you can get it. That is not too bad looking. That's by top 1% rates. By win rates, it's going to be pretty much the same list. Clarkson, your most frequent winner, but also your most popular player. But that's just a good example, right? Of we talk all the time about the need to just kind of ignore individual ownership or not sweat it and understand that it's made out to be a much, much bigger thing than it really is. Individual ownership does not matter, especially on a play like that, where even at like 40% ownership or whatever he is, he's landing in the top winning lineups 40% of the time. You just need him. He's a building block. You differentiate elsewhere. He's just a piece of the kind of a mandatory piece of your construction today. So good chalk it's good chalk for a reason, and it should be in your lineups. A lot of love for that Orlando-Utah game in these results. My gosh. I guess to answer that Mamba question from earlier, I think I kind of like Larry Markkinen a lot here today. I don't know what his ownership looks like, but just the fact that he's in the top lineups on FanDuel nearly 50% of the time, significantly less on DK, but still 30% of the time, pretty damn good. And out of all those guys, probably Brandon Ingram excluded, I think Markkinen's the most trustworthy there. 1.30 FanDuel points per minute so far this season. Since the start of last year, 1.18 FanDuel points, 1.23 DraftKings points. Potentially taking a step forward. Multi-position eligible for 86. I really like that spot. Embiid like all the way at the top of the board, but for the less, the non-superstar types, kind of like that Markkinen option. And he can't be this unpopular. Where is he? Ah, there he is. Yeah, he's going to be owned. 4-game slate. Going to be owned. But I like that a lot. I think that's a really good spot. Boncaro. Like him a lot. We touched on that. There's Embiid down here. If we're going by FanDuel winners. Whoops. Oh, actually. Do it. I accidentally sorted that upside down, so we're going bottom to top here. FanDuel winners. Markkinen, Wagner, Ingram. Little bit more distributed with like some Cade Cunningham sneaking in there. Some CJ, some Melton. But again, a lot of love for the Orlando-Utah game. A lot of guys that are at good prices in that game, good points per dollar plays. Jake's jamming Franz tonight. Enjoy that. Say hi to Franz for me. He also says, Utah, terrible defense and game should play at a higher pace than normal for Orlando. I didn't actually look at the pace numbers, but absolutely will take Jake's word for that one. He's usually not out there steering us wrong. So yet another good reason to check that game. But just, out of the 4 games, again, you've got 2 games that are at pretty low totals and two games that are at least at respectable totals. 221.5 isn't exactly tearing the ceiling off of the league right now, but it's a close game. It's our closest game on the board. Utah 1.5 point dogs, 110 implied points to 111 on the other side. That's easily the closest game of the day. And the other two, with the two early games at 214.5 and 215, and the game behind it between San Antonio and Phoenix having the highest point spread at 8.5, with Phoenix significantly favored, 227 in that game. You could still have that one go a little bit sideways in the fourth quarter, where if they're up to a big lead, maybe KD comes out of the game, maybe Booker doesn't really get pressed for extra minutes in his return to action. So I could see the Stars getting a little bit damaged in that Phoenix game if that goes, starts to go nuclear. So I question what the overall cap is. So yeah, to me, I think that Orlando-Utah game is probably the best game environment of the day. Good call, Jake. Mamba also loves Franz. Couple of sharp guys. I like the call, guys. 46.9% of the time in top lineups on FanDuel. 26.9% of the time in top lineups on DraftKings. 1.01 DraftKings points per minute so far. Very, very solid option. With that, I am basically done there. Let me see if I can open this without destroying the stream. All right. Jake just made a Orlando-Utah game stack. Markkanen, Clarkson, Collins, Suggs, Franz, Boncaro. Sounds pretty solid. I think I'm gonna build my placeholder after the show, and just edit the one that I have in there to be actual guys who are playing. And I think I'm gonna take a hard look at that Orlando-Utah game stack myself. Just real quick, a look at the projections anyway on the board here for the football slate. Who really stands out? You get a huge game out of DeAndre Hopkins again. I love showdown slates where you've got two premium skill players. And in Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, you really do on that Tennessee side. A lot of DeAndre Hopkins will come down to whether Will Levis manages to play out of his mind again. But it could be a very, very good spot for one of those two skill players to go off. And I love getting the skill players in the multiplier spots. So Captain Derrick Henry, Captain DeAndre Hopkins. A lot less on the Pittsburgh side, I think, to work with. I hate the split backfield situation between Najee and Jalen Warren. I'd rather go to the receiving core, either Deontay Johnson or George Pickens. I think those are their two best players overall in terms of your skill players. I don't love that Deontay Johnson never scores. I think it was Laffy that sent out the tweet that was made me chuckle. It was the last Steelers quarterback to throw a touchdown to Deontay Johnson is still Ben Roethlisberger, which is pretty funny at this point. But he's got tons of skills. So I don't mind some Deontay, some George Pickens in the captain roles. I don't know how much I would get to Najee or Jalen Warren in those spots. What do they cost? They're not expensive. I guess based on where they're priced on DK, they're reasonable enough options in the captain spot just because they're cheap and they're going to be out there and they're going to get touches and they've got potential to score. So for cheap captain plays on DraftKings, they're perfectly fine. On FanDuel, where you don't worry about the salary multiplier, I don't know that I'm putting them in that MVP spot all that often. Touchdown dependent, whichever one of them scores the touchdowns is probably the more interesting one. Jalen Warren may be a little bit more interesting based on his upside in the passing game on the DraftKings slate, where you're getting the PPR. Defense on both sides, certainly viable. Tennessee, decent against the run, but basically a pass funnel. Could bode well for Kenny Pickett, but he hasn't really been good this season. But that could definitely bode well for Pickens and Johnson. But there's definitely upside going up against Kenny Pickett and Will Levis for both of these defenses. Couple of picks, couple of sacks, off and running. Kickers, I think, are going to be definitely involved in a game with a 30-point total. Just a lousy-looking game overall. So I could definitely see some kicker involvement in this one. The tight end position, kind of weak. Okonkwo hasn't been good. Connor Hayward is a backup. No Pat Freiermuth. Downboard options like Tajay Spears, Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Ikini, Calvin Austin. Mix and match kind of plays. They're all relatively cheap. That's the nice thing about this one. There's not a ton of crazy high salaries, especially on that DraftKings slate where that's critical. You've got a lot of guys who are going to be on the field at fair prices on DraftKings. So it's an easier one to build lineups for, I think, overall. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes, though. What's up, Fanatic? Yeah, it's an NBA show. I popped up the NFL sheet to just talk NFL real quick, pal, just to wrap the show up. But yeah, we started at 5, went through the NBA, so just grab that little slider and send it back that way, and you'll be rewound and you'll be at the start of the show. But yeah, we went through all the NBA, and that was just a quick wrap up. All the projections are up on the site. I thought I was tripping. Yeah, all the projections are up on the site. I'm going to jump off now, update the NBA projections, see if anything changed, and then I'm going to get some lineups built. I'll be hanging around in Discord if anybody, especially for the football slate, ping me with any questions, anything like that. Be in there building lineups and available to talk. Not seeing any news yet for this slate, NBA-wise. Still all James Harden plans to make his Clippers debut on Monday because that's super relevant. Daniel Gafford questionable for Friday. Who cares? Yeah, I think that's about it, guys. So keep an eye out. Any changes, you'll have full updates up on the site in the next little bit. But with that in mind, good luck out there. Somebody go win something tonight. My phone is ringing. Potential spam is calling me again. Somebody go win something. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, Mama says, wait, Terry, did I give my top play? Yeah, I think Markkanen was my top guy, my top like non-Embiid guy. He's going to be crazy highly owned. But I really like that Lauri Markkanen spot. As like a low-owned play, is there a low-owned guy that we can call out real quick? Let me see. Not like crazy low owned, but I mean, just based on the amount of times that I said his name and what those lineup results were showing, John Collins also isn't bad. He's owned like 20 percentage points less than Markkanen is supposed to be owned, at least per RG. And then just if you can afford him, Embiid is just a smash. He's not popular because he's expensive. Does feel like a balanced kind of a day. In terms of if you like to put terms around your lineup constructions, which is not something you should be doing. It's just, you don't want to make that decision of, all right, this is a day on which I'm going to build balanced lineups or I'm going to build it. It's just a descriptor for how the lineups look after they've come together. We don't want to do that on the front end. But I think as they come together, you're going to see a lot of balanced lineups in there. Who else down board? Who's not owned? I mean, Hawkins isn't projected for any kind of ownership, if you like that idea. Wendell Carter wasn't, I'm not naming him as one of my top plays, but he's certainly a lower owned guy who we were seeing decent results on. Just to throw a few names out there. It doesn't look like Booker's picking up a ton of ownership either on FanDuel. That might just be a product of them being conservative about it with the Q tag, though. Not aggressively. We didn't talk about Schroeder, but he's certainly there. Come on. Right here. Solid option. Coming up in the mid-teens. More frequently in the top 1% than in actual winners. But definitely nice double-digit results there. 1.09 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. Up to 6,200 point guard, shooting guard. Not the greatest in terms of the points per dollar now. If he was more in this price range, the 55s, even like 58, he'd look a little bit better. But even at price, these results aren't terrible. I just don't think he's like an extreme value play. But again, on a day that is going to come up fairly balanced, I think he'll be in there. And if he's in there, then he's got an equal chance. There's no reason that Dennis Schroeder doesn't have an equal chance to succeed as Markelle Fultz, THT, Melton, Cole Anthony, Sohan, Trey Jones, Jalen Suggs. That could be a long list of essentially the same guy. Not saying all those players are exactly the same guy, but you know what I mean, DFS wise. So yeah, Schroeder's on the board. A lot more even spread at the guard spots. Just like, you can see that in the double digits, just, top down outside of book for whatever reason. Daniel Pope. What's going on, Daniel? Good to see you, buddy. So that's about it, gang. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. 608. Got to get some lineups made. Got to let the cat out of the bedroom. He's been locked up, and it's dinner time, so he's probably all angry in there, meowing his face off. And, yeah, that's about it. I really also got to just, get a new tissue. This one's been pretty much destroyed through the course of that show. Jake says you have to get one of Schroeder or Scotty right tonight. Scotty looking probably a little bit better for me. 1.33 points per minute, 1.32 on DraftKings. Slightly more frequently in the top lineups. I like that you get him at the point guard spot on the DK board. 8,200, not bad in terms of points per dollar. Slightly outpacing Schroeder in terms of the points per dollar. Actually, slightly less, though, in terms of the results. Probably just because of how the spend falls, just taking a little bit less money at this position and spending it up to more value in the other spots. But yeah, both of those players have a good opportunity to be pretty relevant tonight. That said, I kind of like the front court guys, I think, a little bit better. Yeah, Siakam putting up the best results on the FanDuel slate. Less on DK. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Dennis Schroeder and Scotty Barnes are your two key Raptors on the DraftKings slate today. A little bit more distributed on FanDuel. That is it for real this time. Daniel Pope says, listening in the background while catching some fish. That's awesome. Perfect Thursday. That sounds pretty nice, dude. Need a good profit for NFL tonight? Hey, me too. Jake says Pirtle looks awesome on DK. Keeps sucking me back in. Yeah, I liked the spot for Pirtle last night, and I have no issues with going right back to it. A very solid points per minute contributor over the last year plus. I forget exactly what the number is, but it was higher than this, and had a decent start anyway. 37.2 last night on the FanDuel scoring in 29 minutes. Not bad results at all, and especially that'll play even sharper on a 4-gamer if he does something like that. Yeah, if this had become 33, 34 minutes, we would have pushed north of 40 and had even a better day. But yeah, out of foul trouble would be nice. But he's got an opportunity today for sure. But anyway, that's it, gang. For real this time. Daniel Pope, enjoy the fishing, pal. Try not to fall out of the boat. And somebody out there, go win something tonight. NBA or NFL, or better yet, go win both. I'll see you tomorrow, guys.